Hey guys, it's the Tominator, and wow, what a show last night. Some major shakeups at the 2022 Mr. Olympia, with a brand new champion being crowned and some surprising placements. Anyway, I'm sure you've heard the news by now, but let's just jump into this final callout and take a closer look. So this was the same top 6 that they had the night before in prejudging, with Hadi Choopan, Derek Lunsford, Nick Walker, Brandon Curry, Samson Dauda, and Big Ramy. Once again, I'll let them get into position and then put the names underneath, since a lot of you guys seem to appreciate that in the last video. So right here in this front double biceps, they all look pretty good. Samson to me is kind of the odd man out. He's just a little too light for his massive frame. He's filling it out the least out of all of them, so despite his aesthetic appeal, he's probably got to be last here. Nick Walker on the left looks crazy with those mind-blowing biceps and deep-cut abs, but I'm noticing now a pretty pronounced asymmetry between the left and right arms, with his left one being much bigger. Derek looks great with the vacuum and V-taper, but again, my criticisms about his lack of bicep separation and outer quad sweep remain. Brandon looks maybe marginally tighter than before, but he was so off during prejudging. He had a lot of ground to make up, and I don't think he really did that. We needed to see like a 10% improvement, and instead we got maybe 1%. You can see that other than the midsection, he doesn't show much definition. Ramy still looks good in this shot. I was reading a lot of comments about his arms shrinking, especially the triceps, and I could kind of see that from certain angles at times, but it's not really evident in this pose right here. Yes, they don't match up to the lower body, but they rarely ever did in prior years either. I like his overall size and quads and the big ribcage here. But for me, this is Hadi's pose right now. He was just super dense and full this year. He looks so powerfully built and complete. The only thing missing from this shot would be some bigger calves. And maybe if we're nitpicking, yeah, the forearms could come up and those tricep attachments are a little short, but that's just genetics. There's nothing he can do about that, and it's a minor flaw in any case. So they flip around Ramy and Nick. Not sure what exactly that accomplished, but maybe a certain judge wanted a closer look at one of them, who knows? And in the front lat spread, they give us this scrolling view, which looks cool and all, but makes it impossible to do proper comparisons. Thankfully, they refrain from this kind of crap throughout the prejudging at least. And I get it, it's the finals, so they want to be a little more flashy and dynamic and what have you. But we're going to have to skip this one for now. Okay, so in the side triceps, and yeah, what's up with that? It's a little out of order. Usually it's the side chest. So I'm legit wondering if the judge misspoke there. But anyway, in this side try, I'd probably give it to Walker. He's so thick and massive from the side. Brandon and Samson look nice too, but Nick is more conditioned than either of them. Ramy looks good once he finally gets settled in it, and would maybe even be good enough for second based on this look. Because while Derek and Hadi both look sharp, they kind of thin out from the side. I think that's an area that both of them need to work on. Not sure it's physically possible given their smaller structures. I guess we'll have to wait and see in future showings. Okay, and now they call for the side chest. Once again, I think Nick is pretty dominant from the side angle. He just fills it out so well and isn't missing any body parts. Curry does likewise, although he's a little softer, particularly through the legs, so he's second at most. In third, it's probably Samson or Derek. Lunsford is sharper for sure, but he's giving up a lot of size. Hadi needs to bring up his hamstrings because he looks a little boxy and top-heavy, and Ramy's undersized arms let him down here, so what was formerly a pretty lights-out pose for the big Egyptian is now less of a knockout punch and more of a quick jab. I don't know, I'm not a boxing or MMA buff, but hopefully that analogy makes sense. He's still got the best side leg in the business, but the balance between the upper and lower halves is off. In the back double by. This is now clearly Derek's pose. Hadi lost a little bit of conditioning here compared to Friday, and so Derek's got him soundly beat now through the glutes and back. I would actually have Nick in second after that because he's dry and massive with absolutely mountainous bicep peaks. It's a little hard to tell here because of the guy standing in the background, but that's something I forgot to mention in the last video, and it needs to be praised. Phil Heath also observed in the live commentary that Nick's lower body reminded him a lot of Branch Warren's from the rear, and I totally see that too. The density through the hamstrings, the thickness of the legs from side to side is very reminiscent of Branch here. Not to mention that his upper body is light years ahead of Branch's in this pose. But still, Derek is wider and even more peeled, so he takes it. After that, I like Hadi, then Brandon, and then Samson. Big Ramy is bringing up the rear because he is missing literally half his back, and that is inexcusable at this level. Okay, in the rear lat spread, I just want to freeze it right here and say that Derek is now unambiguously overtaking Hadi. In prejudging, I thought Hadi won this pose, at least based on the live stream footage, but here at the finals, it's clear that Derek was more conditioned from behind. Hadi's still probably good enough for second, and then I would go with Big Ramy, but we'll take another look in a minute. The ab and thigh is Hadi's pose. Unfortunately, they aren't really synced up here, so we don't get to see all 6 at once, but Hadi is just too chiseled for the rest of this open class. And I want to skip the most muscular for now and come back to it at the end. So they call for Ramy to stand in the middle, and you can see him breathe a visible sigh of relief. Unfortunately, it wouldn't mean much in the end for the former champ, but it was good to see him get directly compared with Nick Walker, the other freaky mass monster in the lineup. So they force him back onto the line because they were creeping forward towards the edge of the stage, which is essentially cheating because, obviously, you gain an unfair advantage the closer you stand to the judging panel. And in this front double, there you can see the difference in the arms between Ramy and Nick. It's pretty revealing and not flattering for Ramy, to say the least. But speaking of unflattering shots, this front lat spread is frankly awful for Nick Walker. He really needs to go back to the drawing board on this. I suspect this one pose alone cost him a placing, maybe even the title, because this isn't even third call-out worthy. The belly is bloated and the taper is practically non-existent. So for all you Nick Walker fans clamoring that he should have won and was robbed, sorry, but no way. His third place finish was justified. He's got to add more quad sweep, some lat width, and most importantly, find a way to streamline that waist, if he ever wants to become a deserving Mr. Olympia champion. In the side chest, though, he bounces back with a vengeance and conclusively overtakes Big Ramy. So we gotta give kudos where it's due. That's an impressive feat. The back double we already called, so let's take another look at that lat spread. And now Hadi once again looks better than Lunsford. I don't know, I think it all depends on picture quality, because we just saw a moment ago that Derek was clearly more conditioned from the rear, but that's not really coming through so well right now. In any case, those guys are 1 and 2. Big Ramy is indeed third, and then probably Brandon. As with the front, Nick is a little too narrow here. Unfortunately, we don't get a great look at the ab and thigh here again, but just trust me that it's going to Hadi. Can't speak to the rest of the order, but oh well, blame the cameramen for not affording us a proper glance. The most muscular for me is Brandon Curry. I was leaning towards him before too, but this just solidifies it. Despite his subpar conditioning, his shapely mass is overwhelming in this crab shot, with those boulder delts, 3D arms, and wide striated chest. Even the legs look good now, size-wise at least, so this is his pose right here. After that, it's either Hadi or Nick, I think. Hadi would easily be winning if he had some better tricep sweep because he looks massive through the chest, shoulders, and quads, and is peeled to boot. Nick, I still think when the angle's not dead on, his midsection looks too big and blocky, and that detracts from those amazing arms and shoulders. Derek and Ramy both look a little underwhelming in this one. In Derek's case, it's just a size thing. Coming up from the 212, it's amazing that he was able to hang and even excel to such a degree next to the big boys, but this is one that he still has lots of room for improvement. With Ramy, I think it's once again the subpar sort of 2D arms that let him down. He's so dense and meaty in certain areas like the pecs and quads, but it just doesn't work when you don't have the guns or definition to match. Phil kept calling for Ramy to hit the crab, but that would have been a really poor choice on his part, because unlike the former 7-time Mr. O, Ramy simply doesn't have the buys and tries to pull it off. He wouldn't do it justice, and I'm glad he didn't bother going for it. Samson, it must be said, is doing a heck of a job here, almost matching Curry in a crab of his own. Very impressive stuff from a guy who, just 3 years ago, was basically a no-name. That's not to be disrespectful, but just as a little aside, I can remember Samson dropping a comment on one of my more popular vids back in 2019. It was the partial reps video, and he said something nice and basically agreed, and also mentioned how he was an IFBB pro, so I took note. But at that point, I had literally never heard of him. And keep in mind, I was covering pretty much every show back then, so trust me when I say, he was not a well-known entity. Fast forward 3 years, and now he's duking it out with the best in the world. Amazing accomplishment. Awesome job, my friend. Okay, so that's going to do it for this 2022 Mr. Olympia. The final placings were as follows. Samson Dowda in 6th, Big Ramy in 5th, Brandon Curry 4th, Nick Walker 3rd, and also voted by the fans as the People's Champ, Derek Lunsford 2nd, and the Persian Wolf, Hadi Choopan, finally laying claim to the throne and becoming just the 17th Mr. Olympia in history. So when it was down to the top 2, I was ecstatic, man. I would have been happy either way because they both brought it, and it was exciting to see Lunsford do so well in his open class debut. There were super high expectations for him going in, and somehow he managed to exceed them. We could be looking at a future multi-time Mr. O if he keeps improving at his current pace, because remember, this guy is young and still has time on his side, unlike most of these other newcomers like Samson or Andrew Jacked, who I believe are both in their mid to late 30s. Derek is only 29 and still growing since moving up from 212, so his potential is through the roof. But Hadi Choopan was my pick to win it after prejudging, and it was so satisfying to watch him seal the deal. This guy has been Mr. Consistency. He just nails it every single year, and often seemed to get under-rewarded in the past, but not this time. And it was also so refreshing to see the Olympia judges leave the politics at the door and not let something like nationality or a language barrier affect the final outcome. So mad respect for them for maintaining objectivity and judging the show as it's supposed to be judged, on the physique and the physique alone. My only complaint about these top 6 placings was Big Ramy dropping all the way down to 5th. In no way, shape, or form did he deserve to be beaten by an off Brandon Curry. That was BS. I would have swapped their placings, and Brandon, honestly, should have been lucky to get 5th based on his conditioning, or lack thereof. I think they kinda did Ramy dirty there, but won't speculate as to any political foul play, especially considering they gave an Iranian the Sandow after all. Alright guys, if you made it this far, thank you for watching till the end, and stay tuned for more, as I still plan to cover the classic physique and potentially also the second callout, since this lineup was so damn deep. Until then, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.